Welcome to Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching, the podcast that builds on conventional wisdom and adds a fresh perspective on this ever-evolving field of coaching.
Are you fed up with advice that doesn't really get to the heart of the matter or really get you?
Whether you're a reluctant or seasoned leader, this podcast is for you.
Embark on a journey of actionable insights, harness untapped potential, and learn to develop a mindset that will transform you permanently.
Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching, where we shatter boundaries and awaken the confident and compassionate leader within.
Welcome to Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching Podcast. We have a special guest today, Dr. Robert Glover, who is the author of this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy.
That's the one.
Yeah, you wrote this in 2000?
That's a good question to say when I wrote it. I didn't set out to write a book. I started working with men. I was a marriage and family therapist by training, and I'd already gotten into therapy because my relationships weren't working very well. And my partner says, problem is everybody thinks you're a nice guy, but you're not. You can be mean. You can hurt my feelings. So you need to go get help. So I luckily landed in some good places that made me start realizing, this paradigm of if I just try to do everything right, avoid conflict, get everybody's approval, not rock the boat, then everything in my life will work okay. And as a therapist, I started hearing guys coming to me for therapy say the same thing. So I thought, I just had started my first men's group. So let's start a No More Mr. Nice Guy group. So I started writing just chapters to give the guys every week. Over a period of about 6 to 7 years, that evolved into a book. They and their girlfriends and wives kept saying, Robert, you should write a book. A lot of people need this. You should go on Oprah. This could be a bestseller. No pressure, right? So I did keep writing. And eventually I found an agent who we shopped it probably for 3 years. And we did get it up as an ebook long before Kindle readers existed. And then a lot of editors said, Robert, we like your books, good book, but our marketing department says men won't buy a self-help book, especially a book that tells them they're losers. I go, no, you don't understand. You don't understand the people that I'm writing this for and who want this book. So it took about 3 years to get it published. The book then came out in print in March of 2003, so 21 years ago, right about now, it came out in print. How long ago did I write it? More years ago than that.
So Marty's writing a book, and his second book now, and about ready to publish it as well. Marty, go ahead.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm curious, in those intervening 20 years, what have you been surprised by about the reception of the book, if anything, or did it go just the way you thought?
There's no way of knowing. The average book back in the day back then when you went through professional publishers to get a book published rather than, put it up on Amazon now, which is what I do with my new books. Back in the day, they said the average book, I think if it didn't sell within 65 days, it came off the shelves, and most didn't. Publishing companies have always liked the books by the big names, people that are household names or already had success at publishing. Music industry was the same way. Let's just keep, putting the same bands out over and over again. When we got it into print, Barnes & Noble had just gotten into the publishing industry. So they've been through several transitions, including bankruptcy, and they no longer publish books, but they are still in business, their business model for brick and mortar stores. But I think they were anticipating some kind of blowback, a reaction, a response. You put a book out called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And there's a paradox to that. We've all probably said that at some time. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm not putting up with that anymore. Then you go, why would somebody write a book teaching men to be not nice? There's already enough not nice guys out. There's a paradox to it, right? So I think the publisher initially thought there'd be some kind of blowback. People will react to this thing. But the truth is the book itself is not reactionary, and it's not really presenting a model of something that people go, that's crazy, or that's out there. It's just teaching men to be authentic, to be real, to be honest, to be transparent, to make their needs a priority, to ask for what they want, surround themselves with good people. There's nothing now everybody's going to just quit listening and go, why would I go get that book then? But the thing is it didn't have that initial blowback of reaction to it. Oh, why is this guy writing a book teaching men to be not nice? What did happen is for maybe the first, I'm just going off vague memory, maybe 8 to 10 years, it sold. The royalty checks maybe got a little bigger. And that's back when I was getting royalty checks yearly. And I remember first time I got like about a $6,000 yearly royalty check. Okay, good. People were buying it. And then I don't know if it hit that hockey stick or something, probably 10, 12 years ago, probably a combination of things. The book had just been out long enough. Therapists had found it, were recommending it. People in 12-step groups were recommending to their buddies. Coaching came onto the scene, and a lot of coaches that work with men, their lives got changed by No More Mr. Nice Guy. So they recommend it.
That's how I first was introduced to the book, was in a men's group.
There you go. Men's group. I launched a new company just this last year, Integration Nation. And I hired an attorney to incorporate it. And I'm talking to this woman attorney in Nevada. And she said, what is the name of your book? And I said it. She goes, that sounds familiar. I think my husband has that book on his shelf. I think he read it in a men's group. I think maybe through his church. I don't know. So even this corporate attorney I hired for my new company, her husband had read the book. So just word of mouth began to spread. Amazon took off. Podcasts like this took off. And so these publishing companies have said, men will not buy a self-help book. Nowadays, people listen to a podcast. Podcasts are hugely popular. Who saw that coming? Guys love podcasts. So they hear a book mentioned. They go on Amazon. They find the book. They click it. And then Amazon says, people who bought this book also bought this book. They click those books too. So guys do buy books. It's not just women buying the self-help book. So I think a combination of things, I think it was a good enough book. When I went back and read the Audible version it's been 6+ years ago now. Originally, a professional voice read the Audible version, and I didn't get a say in that matter, but it'd been out about 15 years. And I told my agent, it's only available in North America. And I told my agent, I want the book available worldwide and I want to read it. And he said, okay. So they contacted the company that had the contract. They said, fine, contract will expire at the end of this calendar year. About 2 weeks later, my agent sends me an email. He says, we strongly suggest you consider accepting this offer. And the same company that had the contract said, we want you to read it. Dr. Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy are synonymous. We want it in our evergreen folder. And we're going to pay you a $75,000 advance and $5,000 to come to New York and read it. I go, okay, I'll take that. I wasn't looking for a $75,000 advance. I just wanted to cancel the contract, get a new one, because I wanted my voice on it and I wanted a worldwide distribution. So this probably was about 2016, maybe 2017, where I went back to New York and read it. And you know what? I'd not read the book for quite some time. Mark, writing a book, you spend so much time in it. Especially if it takes you a few years like it did, you're just in it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally, when you're done with it, you don't know if it's good. You don't know if it's bad. You don't know if anybody's going to want to read it. You don't know because you've just been living it. And so 15 years later after publishing, I'm in sound booth in New York reading it. And I'm reading it, and kind of this answers the question in a roundabout way. 15 years after publication, I'm reading it. I'm getting tears in my eyes, remembering people I wrote about. I'm seeing things going, oh, I've slipped. I'm back to doing that nice guy thing again. I'm glad I read the book again. Yeah. I'm reading it going, this isn't just for nice guys anymore. This is for men. Because everything in there is really for how does a man, and women tell me all the time they love the book.
I have women clients reading it.
Yeah. And to me, it's not just a niche book for men that identify themselves as nice guys. So I think maybe that's the reason, another reason why over the last 10 to 12 years, the royalty checks have just taken off.
Can I add
a lot of reasons, but that may be one.
So getting into the book itself, just a little bit, what have you found in the intervening time has been the most effective part of what you give us in that book at having people show up more authentically?
Okay, that's easy, actually. The thing that people tell me that I hear most often that people get out of No More Mr. Nice Guy is the idea of covert contracts. Something came up the other day. I was watching some videos of my coach's YouTube page, and he did a video on talking about covert contracts, just matter of factly. But that term is out of No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I even just Googled covert contracts, and luckily, most of the people that write blog articles about it at least give me a wave. I think that still helps me to this day. And basically, I'll boil it down even more succinctly than I do in No More Mr. Nice Guy. But nice guys tend to operate by 3 covert contracts. And by the way, when I talk about nice guys, I'm talking about men that we would probably call codependents. I did not use the word codependency in the book on purpose because I wanted to write to men without having them take a term. Because back when I wrote the book, it mainly applied to people who are in a relationship with addicts and often to women who love too much. There wasn't anything written for men about codependency. So that's what it's really about. So these 3 covert contracts of at least the codependent man that I work with are this. Covert contract number 1, they're all if-then propositions, and they're all fundamentally manipulative. They have strings attached. Mm-hmm. Number 1 is that if I'm a good guy, I will be liked and loved. And where I see a lot of men, apply that is that, and then the woman I want to have sex with me, or if they're gay, the guy I want to have sex with me will want to have sex with me. And you can go online and find blog articles written by plenty of women out there. Beware of the nice guy. He listens to you talk about your problems. He does things for you. He's there for you. He's nice to you, treats you well. And then all of a sudden, when you don't want to have sex with him, he becomes hostile. He becomes this. And it's true. It happens. It's covert contract. I'm going to be a good guy. I'll be different than all the jerks. I'll listen to you talk about your problems. I'll do all my virtue signaling, whatever that may be. And then you'll like me and love me. And of course you'll want to have sex with me.
Robert, that was me. I've been married. I'm in my 3rd marriage right now. My first wife died of a brain tumor, but that marriage was that. That's what that marriage was my just number 1. I'm sure I'm going to listen to covert contracts.
We got 2 more coming.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll identify with those as well. But that was absolutely me. And I was in a box, didn't know how to fight my way out of it. I didn't know any other way.
You don't. And when I share all 3, let's come back to that. Okay. What was the answer? Okay. So there's covert contract number 1. If I'm a good guy, I'll be liked and loved. And of course, I got the scoreboard up. I'm a good guy. I do all these good things. People should like me and love me. Now, of course, not everybody likes and loves everybody, right? I don't like and love everybody. There's no sure way to make sure everybody likes and loves you, especially when you're the scorekeeper. Covert contract number 2 is that if I meet your needs, if I read your mind and meet your needs without you having to ask, you will read my mind and meet my needs without me having to ask. All right. And this one is so insidious. You're both laughing at us. So you're okay. So yeah, I'm going to do all these nice things for you because I think you're going to like it. You're going to need it. You're going to appreciate it. And you're going to do nice things for me back. Maybe it's even just appreciate me and be really grateful for everything I did. That's my covert contract. Now, remember, nobody knows these covert contracts exist. That's why they're called covert. Mm-hmm. The nice guy often doesn't know they exist. He's just doing what he's been programmed to do since he was an infant, just giving to get. So I read your mind. You should appreciate me. You should be grateful. You should never get mad at me. You should always be thanking me and praising me for all the nice things I did. And then you should read my mind and give to me without me having to ask. It doesn't work. I mean, I think it's obvious enough to listening that doesn't work. Covert contract number 3 is that if I do everything right, then I will have a smooth, problem-free world. Now, nobody does everything right. Every great philosophical book, whether it's the Old Testament, Talmud, New Testament, the message of all of them is there's nobody perfect. We need the priest. We need sacrifice. We need the sacrificial blood of Christ, whatever it is. There's no getting it right. There's no getting it perfect. There's always going to be a shortfall, right? But the nice guy thinks he really can. I can get it all right. And then everything in life will go smooth. My woman will never get mad at me. My boss will never fire me. God will rain his blessings down on me and nothing bad will ever happen in my life. I won't get sick. My loved ones won't die of brain tumors. But it's such a Peter Pan-ish attitude towards life. That life is not smooth and problem-free. It's chaotic by nature. Mm-hmm. Creation is chaos. And we live in a cosmos that's constantly in a state of creation. These 3 covert contracts the nice guy has, he's unaware of them. Nobody else knows about them. When he thinks he's given, he's kept his side of the contract. And when other people don't, it tends to lead to a lot of frustration,
Sure.
resentment, rage attacks. My ex-wife used to refer to the victim pukes that I would have, the passive aggressive behavior, the indirect anger, all the things that tend to make nice guys not particularly nice. So to answer, you come back to your question, Martin, I think probably the one thing that, like I said, I put the spotlight on is covert contracts and how Nice Guy presented, Mr. Nice Guy presented that model to the world. I remember when that whole idea dawned on me. I was in a men's group, and I think I was probably talking about, my giving to get. And I think my therapist in this men's group, somehow the words all happened in a moment that said covert contract. And it's like, fuck yeah, that's exactly that. I can't think of a better description than what this is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number one takeaway. If I was reading the book today, I go, that is worth the price of the book.
Very good talking, Robert. I'm looking for, here it is. So this is what you wrote in roughly 2000. And I wonder if you agree that this is still the most accurate description of the nice guy syndrome. Can I read it to you?
What I write?
On page 33, it says, recovery from the nice guy syndrome is dependent on revealing oneself and receiving support from safe people. It is essential, therefore, that men who want to break free from nice guy syndrome find safe people to assist them in this process.
I'm glad you read that, because on pretty much every interview I do, once we talk about nice guy syndrome, manifestation, the interviewers say, okay, what's next? What does the nice guy do? Start breaking free.
Yeah.
Number one thing I always say, you can say it, or said it in page 33 in the book early on. Don't try to do this alone. I tell nice guys, you did not become a nice guy in social isolation. You will not break free from nice guy syndrome and social isolation. It's a social dynamic. It is how I show up in the world. It's how I seek value. It's how I seek validation. It's how I get my needs met. It's how I connect. It's how I give and receive love. So it's essential, and this is hard for nice guys, because of either before or after what you read, I talk about toxic shame. That every nice guy at a very early age internalize an inaccurate emotional belief about himself that says, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm broken. We call it toxic shame. It's an emotional state. Later, as we get older and we develop language and we become more interactive with the world, we put words and experience on top of it, but it's like the machine language of our nervous system. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. I'm unlovable. Because of that, nice guys spend their entire lives early on doing trying to do 2 things. Become what I think other people want me to be, so that I'll be liked and loved and get my needs met, and hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction. Now that's usually our needs, our wants, our sexuality, our opinions, our feelings, right? So how are we going to start unhiding everything we've been hiding? How are we going to unhide, the feelings we've kept suppressed, the needs and wants we've kept hidden, the sexuality that we've kept way out of view, unless we do that out, with other people, right? Safe people. Now, for me, when my ex-wife said, you need to go get help, I thought, okay, you're the one that's unhappy all the time and it's never good enough. And okay, I'll go get help. And I landed in good places. I'm so grateful. I don't know if fate was running the show way back then. I don't know about you guys, but as I get older, I become more of a believer in fate. If you'd asked me just 2 or 3 years ago, did I believe in fate? I don't know. I'm more and more, I'm going, man, things just sure keep lining up. Fate landed me in a 12-step group because my ex kept saying, you're a sex addict. It's because I wanted to have sex with my wife, and she didn't. That made me a sex addict. I quickly learned I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict, but I tell you what, that was the perfect place for me to be. It was like 8, 9 guys showing up like at 5:30 once a week. I got excited about going there because I would just reveal everything I'd never told anybody thoughts,
Yeah.
feelings, behaviors, impulses. Now, I grew up in a very fundamental Christian church. I have 2 degrees in religion. I was a minister for 8 years. So I grew up with this hide everything. My father was critical, demeaning, hide everything. I grew up during the angry, as you guys, I imagine, did, angry feminism of the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Erection's a sign of aggression. Every man's a rapist. Hide everything. I got into this 12-step group and I just started revealing everything. And the strongest reaction I ever got was, thanks for sharing, Robert.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then I got into with a therapist and got into a men's group. And it was so therapeutic to just put this stuff out there. And the
Yeah.
therapist would just say, let's just take a look at that. Let's see what that means. What story behind that? I'm going, what? You're not going to have a big reaction to it? And then I go to my men's group and they go, oh, Robert, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. That's just normal stuff. Oh, you mean I've been keeping that repressed, thinking that somehow made me bad or evil or unlovable? You got to get with safe people to start revealing the toxic shame, letting out the stories you have about you, where you're not good enough, and feeling the relief of just, letting that go. It's out now. I'm not carrying it alone. And getting the feedback from people that have no agenda for judging you, to just say, they'll say things like, thanks for sharing that, or actually that makes you normal, or there's probably a story behind that. Let's explore that. Let's see what that goes back to. What can we uncover and let go? It's just nobody's reacting negatively to any of it. So that is so powerful. So I'm glad you read that, Bill.
I am too.
Go find safe people.
Yeah.
It can be a therapist, a coach, a minister, rabbi, 12-step group. Usually not your mother, usually not your wife or girlfriend. I'm not saying they're unsafe people, but they're probably the least people we want to go reveal our dark masterbation fantasies.
Well, and they're also bought into that, the fabric
Exactly.
you want to change.
Yeah, there's usually some kind of fused emotional system. We get deeper into system dynamics here. There's a system that's been going on for some period of time, and systems do not like change, and people within systems do not like change. Even if it looks like it might be a good change, it's still the unknown. It's still scary. You come home and you tell your mother, your partner, oh, I've gotten into therapy and I'm starting to deal with my toxic shame. And our mothers are going, are you saying you had a bad childhood?
Right.
Or our wife or our partner is going, oh, he's going to leave me. I know he's going to leave me. They may want us working on our stuff, but if we start working on it, oh, he's going to work out his stuff and he's going to leave me. So find safe people.
Robert, when I got sober, one of the things my first wife said to me was, I liked it better when you were drinking.
Again, systems don't like change. Let's go to graduate school 101. I remember in my doctoral program, it's the first thing you learn about systems, and everybody co-creates systems to play familiar roles. We experience system dynamics as children in our family. We grow up and we invite people into our life to help us co-create systems that have similar dynamics. That's why we tend to keep inviting the same kind of people into our life over and over again. It feels familiar, and maybe we can even look at it from a karmic standpoint, is what we have to go through to clean that stuff out. Systems 101 is systems like homeostasis. They do not like change, and everybody within the system will work together to keep systems from changing fundamentally. They'll even go to therapy. I've worked with couples. My background's in marriage and family therapy. Couples come in and they work with me, maybe for months, and then something gets revealed that's pretty significant, right? That I should have known, like maybe at least by the second session with me. And then I'll look at the partner and I'll go, did you know about this? And they'll go, uh-huh. I said, for how long? X number of years. And I go, neither one of you thought that this should have been talked about, like in our first or second session together? Couples will actually collude with each other to keep things from changing while going to marriage therapy. Or you think that let's go spend back then our $60 an hour to go work on changing our marriage, but let's not actually give him the information he needs to help us change, because that's too scary.
I'll ignore the elephant, if you will.
Yeah, let's just do that together. Let's just ignore it together.
Can I press into this a little bit? Because the book that I wrote that's coming out this spring is Leadership as Relation. because what I saw was that the way most books and seminars and workshops talk about leadership is as if it's this guy over here and he's different from the rest of it. He's the leader. He's got these certain traits and styles and stuff. And like a Mr. Nice Guy, he's different, right? He's an individual. So the point of my book is about coming from a systems place, seeing that leadership is about how we relate, not how that guy over there is, right? And so change inside of a leadership relationship, and this happens very quickly on the soccer field, for example. Who's got the ball? Who's making room for the pass? It happens very quickly on a soccer field. But in a corporate setting, what I'm finding, and I just wanted to see if this checks out with the nice guy syndrome, is when you do go back to your people, right? You have to go to a 12-step or a counselor or something else first to distinguish this and get in charge of yourself.
Yeah.
But when you do go back to your family or to the people that were part of the old fabric that you want to change, it feels to me the best way is to show that the way that there's a way forward that's beneficial to both of us. It's not that you, Mom, were wrong in the ways you raised me, but if we started relating this new way, we'd both get something out of it.
Yeah, ideally, if you can pitch things that way. But here's let me take this in a couple directions, because I like what you're talking about. We can have fun with this. Like we can go even deeper into graduate level work here. I'll give you an example of leadership. Right now, in the program I launched, we'll have periodic challenges. And so a couple of the guys in my program, a couple of the coaches are really into fitness. One owns a gym. And so they started an 8-week New Year's transformation challenge. And I signed up for it because I'm 68. And you guys know, as older you get, it's harder to keep the weight off and harder to keep the activity level up. And so I've started this transformation challenge. They give us 8 weeks worth of basic food choices. And I've done fitness programs before, so I know how to eat well. And a fitness program that we all do, same thing when we check in and we're doing this. And so here I am at home, and my wife's a gym rat. Her happiest days are she'll work out an hour here at our home gym and then walk up the street to the other gym where they have heavier equipment that she'll do another hour there. So she's a gym rat. So she likes to eat healthy, but she can get away with eating some street tacos and stuff like that because she just works out all the time. I can't get away with it as much. All right, my stepson and his girlfriend, she lives with us. They're both 18. They just love street tacos. They bring these giant, 18-gallon bottles of Coca-Cola home with them. And I keep talking to my wife. I said, I don't want to be like, the asshole dad and just ban the Coca-Cola from the house. But I said, when I watch them just guzzle the Coke, and they both have gone from 2 years ago, they were both lean and in good shape. They both gotten huge, right? And 50% of the population in Mexico is diabetic, mainly from street tacos and Coca-Cola and beer. It's just, and I go, they're only 18 years old and they've both gotten huge in 2 years. And there's this part of me that wants to ban the Coca-Cola from the house. No more ordering the Uber Eats and bringing the tacos by. No. And I thought, you know what? That's not going to work. That's not going to be a leadership that actually gets anything done. And even me making snide comments or giving controlling looks.
Doesn't work. What?
It doesn't work. But if I stay on my healthy diet and eat healthy and get results, and my son pays attention, he'll notice, Dad, you're looking good, right? He'll notice.
So by
example. Now, whether or not that changes him, I don't know. But let's take this now into the graduate level stuff. We can talk about this in terms of what's called first order change and second order change. Mm-hmm. First order change in systems language is I do A hoping to get B, right? I yell at the kids about drinking Coke. Hopefully that's A. B is they quit drinking Coke. And almost everybody just tries first order change for everything. Changing our kids, changing our partners, changing the world, so whatever. If I do A, it's part of that covert contract, even if I do A, then B should happen. Right. And so in the therapeutic model, when I was learning about therapy, basically what I was taught was most people walk into a therapist coach's office because they've been pushing the A button a lot and B isn't happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're stuck, they're frustrated, they're resentful, they're at their wits' end, they're confused. You hear people say a lot. Yeah, they're actually not confused. I don't let my clients use the word confused because I found that giving a confused person more information almost never unconfuses them.
Nice.
my rule of thumb, if a person has some incentive to be confused, they will be confused. So making changes, I'm confused. I don't get it. Second order change. I love this illustration. And I remember it because it boggles everybody. I remember a professor using this illustration of first order change versus second order change. He says, if you take like a baby's mold, old school, not the wind up kind, but just sticks with strings and butterflies and flowers, you got a mold and it's hanging over a baby's crib and you tap one of the flowers, you perturbate the system, you get it moving. He says, how can you predict where it will come to rest? And everybody ponders that. The engineers go crazy on, well, you can develop this mathematical code. I work with a lot of engineers, but the answer is really very simple. It's an illustration of first order change. If nothing fundamental has changed to the system, it's going to come to rest exactly to where it was resting before. Because gravity brought the inertia, it came to rest. And if nothing's changed in the system, it'll come to rest exactly the same place. That's what first order change is. It almost always just comes right back to where it began. Okay? Second order change is a systemic change where you fundamentally alter the system. Maybe you cut a flower off. Maybe you shorten a string. Maybe move a string up on the stick a little bit. Perturbate it. You have no clue where it's going to end up. That's second order change. That is what good coaching, good therapy, good leadership is. You come in, now I got to get everybody to B. So I got to keep pushing. If that A button doesn't work, I'll push this A button. And if that A button doesn't work, I'll push that A. Because we got to get to B. Okay. But what if you come in and say, I'm just going to alter the system in some fundamental way? Maybe just make an observation about the system. As simple as when parents would come and bring this kid who's been acting out at home and they tell about all the stuff the kid's doing. I look at the kid and I go, you know what? Everything your parents talk about sounds pretty normal for a kid your age. So I tell the kid, you just keep doing whatever it is you're doing because you're a normal 7-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever. Now, just sit back. You can eavesdrop. You can read your book. You can color, whatever. I'm going to talk to your parents for a little bit. And then with the kid listening, I've already reframed the system. He's a normal kid. I talked with the parents about creating some boundaries, having some behaviors, making a list, having rewards, having consequences. Put it on the parents to where they've got to do a better job of creating structure for the kid. The kid, they come back a few weeks later and go, the kid's doing fine, actually. Because we just reframed the system. He came in there thinking, I'm going to get told how bad I am. I'm this terrible kid, and I don't ever clean my room, and I yell at my sister, and I do this, and I don't turn the TV off when I say it. But if you just reframe the system, so if in marriage counseling, if a couple comes in, and if I could just find one way to just step in and tweak how they view what's going on between themselves. They're complaining about the thing their partner does. And if you just say, what if that was actually a gift? People go, what do you mean? Well, what if it's actually a gift? I don't know what you're talking about. Now, all of a sudden, they're looking and thinking about it differently. So your leadership thing is the same. If the leadership walks in a room and says, I've decided we got to get to point B, and by this time, I've had so many friends over the years who are in sales. And it's like sales department treat salespeople like they've got to just be the most dumbest, unmotivated people on the planet. If we don't give you sales quotas and don't put this thing out there, this giant carrot, if we don't do it, you won't sell a goddamn thing, right? I'm thinking, oh, come on. And then what happens once the salespeople are successful in the sales model? They revamp the system of how they're going to pay the salespeople. If they actually are successful. So in your leadership, what if you just come in and led by example, tweaked the system in some way, reframed something in some way, other than, oh, if we don't cut these costs and make this profits, we're going to be broke in 6 months. What's a different way you can frame it that people want to show up
Right.
and be a part of
Exactly.
that journey?
Exactly.
Bill, you live in Spokane, right?
That's right.
You ever get to Seattle very much?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm born and raised in Seattle. My mother still lives in Sammamish. My son lives over Colfax, Pullman area. And
Yeah.
my first wife lives over in Deer Park. You know the territory.
Yeah.
So you and Martin just then about, no, you can ask your questions. No, you better take some questions. You're like two
Nice
people
guy.
at a 4-way stop in Seattle, right? No, you go. No, you go. No, you go. And the traffic's backing up because everybody's friggin' nice and nobody will just go through the intersection. So I thought, okay, you're in Spokane. I can use a Seattle analogy. Such a
Okay.
nice city.
Alright.
Such
Well,
a nice city.
I'd like to just bring in the 15 years ago Bill to see how nice he was.
Yeah. Okay. The pre-recovery, pre-sobriety.
That's
Okay.
right. That would have just made you sick. All right, Marty, go ahead. You got another question.
What comes after? What's the sequel? Where does the project that you are, Robert, where does it go from here?
Oh, we're talking second order. I don't know. Life's so interesting. Yeah, I've had a couple of near-death experiences in the last 6 years. About 6 years ago, I got really sick. Nobody could figure out what was wrong. Doctors here in Mexico, doctors up in Seattle. Finally, a doctor here ran the right test, CAT scan. I had a tumor blocking my small intestine. And he said, we got to remove that right now. He said, that could rupture your small intestine. I said, give me 48 hours. Let me hide the porn. I was use that joke and people just try to laugh at that joke. I just had to get everything lined up before I went into a Mexican hospital with a doctor I didn't know was going to open up my gut, right? I survived it beautifully. About a little over a year ago, COVID blew up my prostate. Won't go into details, but I had to have prostate surgery after that. Did the whole kind of rotor-rooter process that they do. And I've been fine ever since. You guys are in my age bracket, and your mortality it's right. It's there. It's real.
Mhm.
Carlos Castaneda said, keep death here on your left side. Keep it close. And it seems like every book I've read over the last 2 or 3 years, doesn't matter if it's fiction, nonfiction, they've all been about death in some way or another. That's why I
Yeah.
said, man, I'm starting to believe in fate. And I've come to believe that every fiction writer must believe in fate because they actually know the outcome, right, of the protagonist and how everything's going to end up. So they must
I
believe
see,
in fate.
yeah.
So anyway, about 3 years ago, coming up on 3 years ago, I think I'll take a little sabbatical and entertain the idea of semi-retirement. I was about 65 at the time. I just turned 68 last December. So I took about 3 months off in the summer. I had an RV. That might have been before I bought the RV. Went camping anyway and read books and relaxed and got done. There's some things I want to get done. I want to convert all my courses into video courses. So I dove into that. And then about 3 years ago, a guy attending a workshop with me said, Robert, you should start a membership program for men. And you should put all the material, all you've ever created into it. And I'd already been working on that idea as a possibility. I've got thousands of hours of content, written, Q&A, forums, video, just thousands of hours. And so we've spent the last 3 years putting all of that, transcribing everything, where everything can be searched with search engine, everything's searchable for artificial intelligence. And so this client said, you should have a men's membership program. And he said, my wife has a sourdough bread membership program, and she's made $750,000 in the last 2 years.
Wow.
You're kidding me.
Wow.
So that sounds like a good idea. I'm swimming in deeper waters than I've ever swam in my life, just in terms of the business model. But so the last 3 years, we've been working on Integration Nation. I've got 7 founding coaches that have worked with me along the way, a great tech team that's been with me for years. We now have several hundred men. We launched in July of 2023, and it's growing, and the men just love it. They're just loving it. We have up to 9 calls a week they can jump on, all included in the membership price of it. We have a lot of goodies, and we're not even close to done. I have so many ideas. So here I am, is 68 years old, where a lot of guys are retired, thinking about retirement, thinking about, playing a lot of golf and watching a lot of Fox News. And, I'm going, what's next? How do I build this team? What kind of consultants do I need to bring in to take this to the next level? And I'm so excited Of all these younger guys, I intentionally picked a lot of younger coaches to work with me because odds are I'll die before them. And I wanted to leave, it's my legacy. I want to leave not only the content I've created, but I am such a believer that men perform at their best with other men, to have a tribe, to have a team, to just have connection with men. Going it alone, we don't survive. We don't do well. And so I'm just committed to building something that every man on this planet, if he wants to be in a men's program, he can come in. We've got financial need scholarships. They can come in and pick their price point if they're in financial need. And I teach a lesson every Thursday on our calls. We have a call that I'm on every Thursday. We have breakout rooms, Q&A. I mentioned I was a minister for 8 years, and I for a long time that I liked being a preacher. I did. I liked teaching. And I thought, but no church will ever hire me because I say fuck too much. And I thought, if I ever become a minister again, I'd have to start my own church.
Yeah, I'll go to that church.
It hasn't skipped my awareness over the last few months that even though I didn't start my own church, I have started a movement in which I get to teach.
Yeah.
And I get to talk about love. And I get to talk about men loving themselves and opening to love and leveling up to the best version of themselves and living their best lives. And so what's next? I'm in the middle of that. So that's what I'm about these days.
A legacy of love. That's what you're in. The
Legacy of love. What a great way to put it.
That is beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to begin to wrap up. I dropped the name of the book you were looking for in chat there.
There it is. John Irving. He also wrote World According to Garp.
Oh, okay.
I remember seeing that years ago. So yeah. That the book for Owen Meany, good book, but it's about a guy that has a vision of his own death. He doesn't know exactly the context of how he's going to die, but he's seen enough of the details and the date that he knows how he's going to die. And then, like I said, right after that, I read Slaughterhouse-Five again. I hadn't read that since high school. And this is a guy that actually can see all parts of his life, like he's watching a movie reel, and he knows how he's going to die, and he's not upset because he can always go back in the reel and just start watching at some other point again.
Mm-hmm.
So, I keep watching this stuff and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know how I'm going to die, but I think maybe it's not time for me to die yet. And maybe there's still some things that are on tap that are supposed to come out of me before.
I hope you're right about that.
It sure feels like there's a lot of life still in you, for sure.
Yeah, I don't understand how you might be as inspired as you are and as inspired, frankly, as I am. I'm your age too, Robert. I'm 68. And I do feel like I'm just on the ramp to take off. I'm just
we're at our prime if you think about it. If in prime in terms of the influence we can have on the world.
Yeah,
we've been through it all, we've seen it all, we've tried it all, we've messed up, made all the mistakes, and we know how systems work, we know how people work. Who's at a better position to take a big message into the world? A 68-year-old with vision and energy and passion, or a 28-year-old who's watched a lot of stuff on the internet?
Yeah. Here we go, Robert. I want to ask you a couple things. One of them is you said you'd written a bunch of new books or some new books since No More Mr. Nice Guy. What are they?
I have. Okay. They're all stacked right there behind me. 2 dating books. After my second divorce, in my late 40s, early 50s, I got out in the single world, learned how to date, and got successful enough that people asked me to teach them how to do it. I'm not a dating guru, but I guess I am a relationship expert, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I've written 2 books on dating essentials for men, and another book called Dating Essentials for Men, FAQ, Frequently Asked Questions, that's taken from a forum that was attached to the course of Dating Essentials for Men. That's actually my favorite book, the Dating Essentials for Men FAQ, because it's just to the point about stuff that works and doesn't work. Not just about dating, but just a lot about life. Mm-hmm. And then there's another book in the stack that I co-wrote with one of my coaches called The Big Stick, where I asked him a few years ago, I said, Tony, I got this crazy idea. And I said, I've got all this material, and I don't want to just die and everything end up in a Dropbox folder somewhere. And and that was before I had the idea, or some bright guy gave me the idea to start this membership program. Mm-hmm. And I said, Tony, what do you think about, I knew he was a good writer already. And I said, about taking all of my material and seeing if you can pull it into one book that makes sense. And he goes, I've been thinking the same thing. Well, that's a match made in heaven or hell. I'm not sure which.
Fate.
Yeah, there's fate. So anyway, the book's been out not quite a year. It seems to be doing well. People tell me all the time. I've read No More Mr. Nice Guy 6 times, and I'm halfway through The Big Stick. And it's thick. And we called it The Big Stick because Tony says, Robert, we just had a working title for a while. You coming out of recovery. I was calling it The Big Book, but I know you can't really call it The Big Book because the Big Book's in 12 steps. But he said, Robert, how about we call it The Big Stick? Because you say all the time, I love working with men because I can take out the big stick and whack them upside the head and get their attention. And they go, Robert, thank you. That's the best thing that ever happened to me. So I sat with it a while and said, you're right. I like it. Let's go with it. So it's The Big Stick.
I'm so relieved to find out that when you recover from Nice Guy, you don't turn into an asshole. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Robert. And
you haven't seen the other parts of me that I keep hidden.
You're doing a great performance if that's what you're doing. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to say yes to us inviting you back again sometime.
I would be happy to.
Maybe we let this stew for a few months and then have you back on the show again. Closing thoughts. What would you like our audience to know? Our audience of leaders, potential, actual, seasoned, and brand new leaders. What would you like them to know?
Kind of going back to what Martin was talking about. Really, leadership is about you, leading you. And maybe I'll give an analogy in relationship. I talk with men about setting the tone and leading in their intimate relationships. And when I'm talking with guys, often they'll say, okay, Dr. Glover, I understand you say take control. I go, no. You've never heard me use the word take control. I'm not going to tell you to go take control of your relationship, take control of your girlfriend, your wife, your partner. I can barely control me, let alone try to control anything that's way out of my control. It's Byron Katie says, you need to ask, well, what's my problem, their problem, and God's problem?
Mm-hmm.
Or as my wife, my dear Mexican wife says in Spanish, no son mis changos, no es mi circo. Martin, do you speak enough Spanish? Know what I just said?
Yes.
Not my monkeys, not my circus. I'm not going to try to manage or control anything that's not in my ability to manage or control. But I tell the guys, true leadership in a relationship, it might be setting the emotional tone. So if your wife's gripey or in a bad mood, and you don't have to follow her down that emotional rabbit hole. You can lift the emotional tone. But you don't have to tell your wife, we're going to eat this or we're going to do that. You can say, hey, I'd love Chinese tonight. Ask yourself, what do I want? What feels good to me? What would I like to do? If you're on the dance floor, I took salsa lessons for a few years. The guys has to be constantly thinking ahead. Or how do I want to lead this person? What do I want to do next? So it's not a control issue, but somebody has to show up and say, hey, let's try this. Somebody has to get the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. So whether it's leadership in relationship, it doesn't have to be the guy. But I found that in most situations, and this is a whole new discussion, we can wait for another. The default masculine in the relationship, with the masculine is the person who's most inclined to be the doer, the feminine most inclined to be done to. And that can be man or woman, doesn't matter. But leadership is just leading self. Back to Martin's example, we're talking about corporations or businesses or other systems. Is if that person shows up and says, listen, I'm inspired. Here's the direction I'm going. Anybody want to tag along? Let's go do it. Let's get it done. And so that leadership begins with self. So lead self. And I don't know, Martin, if you're working on your book, if you came across Seth Godin's book on tribes, but he talks in his good book. Most of Seth Godin's books are pretty easy reading, but he just talks about people are just wanting leadership in their tribe. And it's not, and everybody can fall into that role. Everybody can fall into that role. And he said, we're all just craving leadership in our tribe. So lead self, because people can't follow where nobody's leading.
That's right.
So somebody's got to lead in order for people to have something to follow.
Robert,
again,
we're moving right up against my hard stop. One more question for you.
You're going to ask another question? You should know better, man. You should know better.
This one's simple. Let's see if you can keep it simple. What is the website address to join your men's group?
It is integrationnation.net.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Glover, author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. We'll see you on the next episode that you show up for.
Thank you for the invitation. We'll see you soon.
That concludes another episode of Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to fuel your leadership journey.
Remember, true leadership is not about you. It's about empowering others.
Take your insights to heart and cultivate a leadership mindset that will transform you from within.
Thank you for joining us on this quest to leadership excellence. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we delve deeper into the art of leadership.
Until next time, remember that you have the power to lead with confidence and compassion from the inside out.